Communications Director. We are gathered here at Government House in St. Croix for an exciting and momentous occasion as Governor Albert Bryan Jr. prepares to announce a landmark partnership that will have a transformative impact on the Virgin Islands and the broader Caribbean region. This initiative represents a major step forward in advancing our regional economic development, trade relations, and transportation connectivity. It also creates new opportunities for the people of the Virgin Islands and strengthening our role as a vital player in the Caribbean economy. Governor Bryan will share more about this historic collaboration shortly, and I assure you, this is just the beginning of a new chapter for St. Croix and the USVI as we move forward a more prosperous and interconnected future. Today, you will also hear from Anthony Weeks, USVI Special Economic Envoy and President and Managing Director of SETI Inc., Raphael D'Angeli, Vice Chairman of Connect Carib, Chief Executive Officer and Technical Director of CARICOM Private Sector Organization, Dr. Patrick Antoine was supposed to join us virtually, but unfortunately we have some technical issues with that connection, and so we sincerely apologize for that. And of course, the Honorable Governor Albert Bryan Jr. We also have some other very important stakeholders who we would like to acknowledge today as well. Mr. Brendan Mohammed, President of the Cargo Division for Connect Carib, Rudy Rampersad, Board Member of Connect Carib and Chief Operating Officer of Ramps Logistics, Alex Koutsekis, I'm sorry, Mr. Koutsekis, Owner, President of Petromar International, and Principal Member of St. Croix Shipyards, LLC, Kenneth Schuster, President of Global Engagement Support Services and Principal Member of St. Croix Shipyards, LLC, Attorney Scott McChain, Esquire, of McChain Ham Law Firm, and Vice President of SETI Inc., Mr. John Clendenin, President and CEO of IC Group and IC Logistics. Also, Ambassador Althea Wiggins, Special Envoy to Suriname and Guyana for the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Motley. We also have Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, Chairman and CEO of Connect Carib, and the rest of the Connect Carib team. We appreciate you for joining us both here in person and virtually. Thank you, and now I'll turn over the conference to Mr. Weeks. Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Richard. So over a year ago, we started this mission, this journey. When the governor appointed me as Special Economic Envoy, I made a commitment to him to really position the U.S. Virgin Islands, particularly on St. Croix, as a major industrial hub. There's precedence there because obviously for 60 years, we've had a major a driver of the economy, which was the refinery, and they're in the process of trying to restart. But this is why it's important. There are 50 states in the United States, but there is a special designation of St. Croix in so many different ways on a federal level. And we have not done what I think we should be doing in terms of leveraging St. Croix to be the juggernaut it should be in the global market. So a year ago, Governor Albert and myself and some other delegates, we went to the New York Stock Exchange, met the senior level executives there. We also went to Taiwan. We have the special relationship with Taiwan. And then a year ago, we also had the summit here. Today, momentous occasion is an extension of that. And what does it mean? My colleague and I, Attorney Scott McChain, we founded the St. Croix Economic Development Initiative. And we felt while we look at this local economic situation, it was important to address, position the U.S. Virgin Islands to be a major force facilitating trade, commerce, and capital markets. And so I'm pleased to announce today, formally, that we've created a public-private partnership, a macroeconomic development policy initiative called the Caribbean America's Single Economy. Why is that important? Back in 1989, CARICOM commissioned a study to create the Caribbean single market and economy. CARICOM is a 15-member state which include Guyana and Suriname, even though they're in South America. The U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico are authorized to participate as observer in CARICOM. We can't be a member state. Coincidentally, while I was driving the private sector side of the discussion, Governor Albert Brown was doing the government-to-government drafting of the technical document for a relationship between the U.S. Virgin Islands and CARICOM. And today is that landmark historic event where going forward, we are now going to we're going to build the maritime network. The players that you see here today are the players that are going to be responsible for building that maritime network throughout the entire Caribbean. So literally, when we talk about the United States being a contiguous state, bridges, tunnels, highways, water ferries, what we're literally doing now, we're building this network of passenger and cargo ferry that will connect all of the Caribbean coming from South America, Suriname, up to the U.S. Virgin Islands. They're going to be three major hubs: Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. And the reason that's important, we're going to open markets on both sides. We're going to represent companies that want to do business within the United States. We are the hub. St. Croix becomes the hub where all of those activities will take place. And vice versa, companies want to do business in the Caribbean, this would be the hub as well. And the governor's going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to be able to bring up my colleague, Raphael DeAngelis. He's the vice chair of Connect Carib, but also he's also the chair of the New York Upturn Fund. They're the investment banking firm that's responsible on the governmental and private sector side to talk about where the money's going to come from to build out these initiatives. So I want to be able to call up my colleague, Raphael, to the podium.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Governor. 3 years ago, we had a vision in New York with Dr. Thomas in how can you bring the Caribbean people together? How can we bring economic prosperity for this region? And we identified one key element that is fundamental for success: connectivity. The reason that economic prosperity hasn't happened in this region is for the lack of connectivity. So we thought, wow, what if we start creating routes of boats and we create a project called Connect Caribbean that people could simply go from one island to the other, or more important, produce a product in one island and ship to the other at a very low cost. So what it started as an ambitious project is start taking shape first within the Caribbean region, and then eventually evolved to the leadership of the governor of the Virgin Islands into saying this is actually aligned with our proposition in the region. And for that reason, it's why we're here today. It's actually the biggest consequence of what we're creating here. It's a change of culture. Instead of looking at the islands as separate elements of an organism, we start looking as one. The same way every successful country in the world looked at each other. The United States is the United States. What we're trying to create here is the united countries of the Caribbean with the leadership of the Virgin Islands and certain other region. It has been a dream of mine and a dream of Dr. Thomas. And we got so far on this, but we need the United States leadership into actually creating the economic dynamic across the region. We have talked to shipping companies into guarantee them a rate between countries as low as ground rate for standard express packages. So that will boost e-commerce platform across the region in a $4 billion business estimated by CARICOM today. And we're really looking forward to start that going using St. Croix as our major point of interconnectivity between the United States and the Caribbean community. Yes, you come.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks, and thank you, Mr. Angeli. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I introduce the Honorable Governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Governor Albert Brown Jr. Governor.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us here today as we embark on yet another initiative aimed on capitalizing on the tremendous opportunities presented by the U.S. Virgin Islands strategic location, particularly the development of our blue economy here on St. Croix. Yesterday, we had the launch of Department of Education's first two major projects in St. Thomas with the rebuild of the Charlton Mali High School and the Bertha C. Bushelta renovation. It was very well attended. People are all excited about it. We also are celebrating the launch and the continuous wins for USVI rebuild, which is $8 billion worth of contracts. We now have actually awarded the project management piece of that. One of the $1 billion contracts is just about to be awarded. And then we also have, actually was awarded already for the rebuild of, I think, 6 St. Thomas schools. And we have the one for St. John that's supposed to be going out presently, if it's not out already. So a lot of excitement around recovery infrastructure in those projects. But the thing is, what happens after all of that? After all that federal money is done, how do we create sustainability? What is beyond all of the construction projects and everything that will ensue? See, from the very beginning of my administration, I've emphasized the importance of harnessing the potential of not only our maritime resources, but also our Caribbean resources. In my first address, I mentioned, for too long, we have governed with our backs to the water. Today's signing of this memorandum of understanding is just one more step forward in ensuring that we turn toward the water and take full advantage of the economic benefits that lie within our reach. Today's partnership with Connect Carib, a subsidiary of Pleon Group of Barbados, represents a major move in strategy to grow the territory's blue economy and tap into the vast transshipment opportunities that exist in this region. Through this MOU, we're launching a lot of things, but I want you to recognize the significance of what we have here. We have government leadership connecting with CARICOM and other Caribbean islands. As you know, I've been making a lot of moves, introducing ourselves to our Eastern Caribbean partners. We also have the private sector interconnecting. Later on today at Government House, we will be having the openings cocktail for the South Shore Investor Trade Roundtable. Why is this significant? Because this is just another piece of putting together the future of St. Croix and essentially the future of the Virgin Islands. The real economic growth that's left to be seen is on the Big Island. We've been saying this for years, but now we have pieces coming together. We have a refinery owner that really has a broad outlook on what we could do with the property, including refining. We have the South Shore Free Trade Zone economic policy piece that is in place, which looks at how do we import products, add value to them, and export them. We have the Renaissance Group that is looking at the sale of that property, and we're working with them hand in glove to make sure that we facilitate it in a way that promotes economic growth. And then we have this MOU going on today, which is really the first major move in terms of developing that area and seeking to form trade alliances with our Caribbean partners. Big day, huge day. I really want to thank Anthony Weeks for the work that he has done on this. He has been working at this for quite some time. And the conversation has been around for quite some time, but we now have access to the investors that want to look at these properties, want to look at St. Croix as a worthy investment for the future. Adding to that, the things that we're doing around energy to support the pieces, especially on St. Croix in terms of manufacturing and value-added products. We are also making a lot of other moves in terms of bringing the Caribbean closer together, whether that be our work with CTO and working to find ways to connect the Caribbean through ferries, through air, and through direct flights. The growth of the Caribbean region is all tied together, and we want to be the center of that initiative. So I want to thank my partners that came out today for the signing of this MOU, because there's some effective business, what we will say, foundations that will be set here, not only for the Pleon Group and Connect Carib, but also for the rest of the Caribbean that is watching to see what is going on. What will this allow us to do? more business on business, business to business dealings, more communication with our business people in the Caribbean, and absolutely coming together to go to Washington and promote the Caribbean as an economic initiative on a whole to the nation. One of the things that we've been trying to do is to create an economic initiative for the Caribbean through both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And this partnership helps us puts us closer to that. In the Caribbean, the Virgin Islands is often isolated. It's not a part of what is going on. But there's so much that this MOU is going to allow us to do together, whether it's manufacturing, agriculture, energy, education and training, even healthcare, workforce development, which we are huge on now. We have so much work to do. But direct investment in our economy with the people of the Caribbean is so important. Lastly, I want to say, I think what is important about this is the development of homegrown enterprises. You know, the people that raised me and the people that laid the groundwork for who we are today, develop a middle-class economy in the Virgin Islands using the government, created government jobs in order to employ people. They encourage young people to join the government and stay in the government and work 30 years. We are embarking on a new Virgin Islands economic framework. It's a framework where Virgin Islanders should be those who are building hotels, starting the business, doing the construction companies, not by themselves, but with partners, but certainly as players to the table that allow for our economic growth. So I really want to say thank you again to Anthony Raphael for leading this. It's a tremendous piece of work today, and encourage people to come to our investor roundtable tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. All day long, we're going to have investors touring the South Shore Economic Trade Zone to look at different things that we have to offer there. This is going to be at the Port Authority, and I'm sure these gentlemen and ladies will be there as well to bring on a new era in economic development for the island of St. Croix and for the Virgin Islands government. Thank you. I'll take some questions from the press. Good morning.
Hi, so Kim McAvoy with the Daily News. When we talk about placing St. Croix as a trade hub, are we talking about developing more infrastructure on the island to accommodate increased marine traffic, or is it using what we already have on the South Shore? I mean, what does this look like practically for people who are going to be driving on that part of the island for the next few years?
I think, thank you for that question. I mean, St. Croix already has tremendous infrastructure. Between the refinery and Frederickstead, we have 2 deep water ports. You put in the container port, if you consider that separately, we have 3. And then Renaissance has an additional deep water port. The refinery has at least 4 different power plants included therein. Plus we have the resources of the terminal. There's water in the refinery as well too. We added that to at least 3 huge solar farms that we're building now for St. Croix. We have a lot of land. St. Croix has a higher unemployment, so we have a human resource. We have the University of the Islands, the University of the Virgin Islands. So we have a lot of initial resources, but we're building out even more. It's always been my opinion that, I mean, and if we could, we would have acquired the Renaissance property a long time ago. It's a huge resource for us because it's already zoned industrial. We got 17 megawatts of power at Diageo right now generating power. And one of the things that we did when we created this South Shore plan is that we allowed for power energy to be traded. Long term, we want to be able to get to a point where we could offer energy packages to manufacturers coming to St. Croix so that for once it will make sense again for them to get the EDC benefits, because manufacturing left because incredible amounts of power, the cost of power. But if we get that down, the addition of robotics and AI to complement the already workforce that we have, these are the things that we're going to be trying to build out. We still have a lot of flexibility in the dollars. Like I said, we're going to be building out infrastructure for the next 10 to 15 years. Remember now, we also have there'll be a new King Airport. There'll be a new King Airport, but there'll also be a new Henry Rosen Airport here in St. Croix too. So that opens up a host of possibilities, not only for passengers, but for cargo as well.
Thank you. And so, as the economic benefit to Virgin Islanders, is that going to look like just more jobs in this sector, or can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the one thing, and I love these conversations because, when we passed the Hotel Development Act, it took 10 years for a hotel to be able to take advantage of that. That's the Marriott Frenchman's Reef. If you look at the EDC stuff that we passed extending the amount of years that you could get EDC benefits, you're looking at, when you look at downtown St. Thomas and Post Office, you're seeing EDC companies now building buildings. We got some big announcements next week again about EDC investment in downtown Charlotte Amalia. So economic development takes time. It's not a today, tomorrow thing. And that's why this is so crucial, because these are the seeds that will provide shade to our children. I don't think the full impact of the South Shore Economic Trade Zone is going to be felt next year or the year after. But this is the initial impetus that's telling the world that we're open for business. We want to work with people. We have an energy solution in the Caribbean. And we want to be part of the Caribbean conversation because we have been excluded, mostly by choice. But there are also some other things that went on there with the State Department. I have to say, it was incredibly difficult to come along this way to be an associate member of CARICOM. And as I'm trying to firmly make the Virgin Islands a fixture in that conversation, so succession may be the next governor can participate in that conversation and it won't be lost.
And you touched on it a little bit, but my last question was going to be about working with the federal government, both to secure this MOU and also just to develop a relationship with CARICOM. Can you speak a little bit about that process?
Yeah, we were bought as a strategic entity in 1917 by the U.S. For war or to avoid war or to manage in wars. Since then, we haven't really established a strategic position in terms of national policy. The Caribbean is growing. It's over 60 million people in the Caribbean basin, and there's no clear-cut policy by the U.S. We've had China and Taiwan and other countries investing heavily in the Caribbean. And being so close to the U.S. mainland, we really haven't seen that in terms of policy or in anything else. One of the great examples of this was COVID. We cruise ships, which bring 90%, 70% of our passengers to our shores. We had no assistance from the U.S. government in ensuring that cruise ships were safe or that they had any kind of sustainability. Those ships are the lifeblood of our economy. If they can't come, we don't get tourists. And then we have no support around that. Creating a strong Caribbean voice, not only in tourism, but in trade. How do we get more Caribbean products on shelves in the United States? And how do we position ourselves to be the voice of the U.S. in the Caribbean, the English voice, as I say, because Puerto Rico has been firmly planted as the Hispanic voice in the Caribbean. So strategically and long term, that's the way that I'm looking, because with the development of oil in Guyana, us having a refinery here, the Dominican Republic being established as a world port and raw materials coming in here, our ability to waive customs fees and quotas because we are in our own customs zone provides strategic advantage to a lot of different avenues, and we haven't been taking advantage of them. So while we look to the smaller things, the potholes and the healthcare issues and the stuff that's going on, and building those out, we have to look to the larger issues and sustainability. What's at the end of this decade of progress and construction? The last time this happened, as I tell people, was in the 70s, and in the 80s, all we had were overcrowded schools, overwhelmed hospitals, housing shortages. So we have to start planning now on how do we create and high unemployment. How do we create now or do now the things that will provide the sustainability and the transition into a new VI economy?
Hi, good morning, Governor. Jesse Daly with The Source. Nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you.
So you actually answered some of my questions through Kit's questions, but you briefly mentioned that it takes time to see results, and it sounds like this initiative is going to be laying, as you said, the seeds for success. And I think it sounds wonderful for the island of St. Croix. When do you expect to really start seeing things moving and seeing these results? For example, seeing more ferries, more flights interconnecting the Caribbean and using St. Croix as this hub or
Well,
one of the hubs.
Well, we're seeing it already. I should say Virgin Islands, because we have St. Croix specific things, and then we have regional, wider territorial subjects. Like right now, just for example, Cape Air's daily flights to Nevis. We just went down to Nevis and used that flight as connecting us to Nevis more readily. We also have flights out to Anguilla. Trying to get larger European flights into St. Croix has always been an initiative recently of the Virgin Islands. Recently, Commissioner Bachelta was in Bahrain doing talks at the Routes Conference and presenting about those opportunities in the Virgin Islands. St. Croix, I really see as regaining our excellence through AI and robotics. And the key to that is through low energy. When you look at the future, people, the pandemic gave us a little preview of what it's going to be. People want to live in beautiful places and work anywhere. And I think St. Croix, as I call it, the last residential island. This is the last island in the Virgin Islands where you can make a reasonable salary and still afford to buy a house, have a home, send your kids to school. That is becoming more and more difficult on St. Thomas, and is absolutely impossible on St. John. So this island also has the most land available for use, and like I said before, the most resources. So when you look forward, I think our construction will create labor shortage for the next 4 or 5 years. Then it'll peak and then it'll start to drop off. At this point, projects that we're talking about now with the economic free trade zone, banking, financing, and other things that we're delving in should start to take off. The other thing is the company of today uses robotics to supplement workers. So having low energy will allow for robotics to come in. It'll still need people to do things, but it will be less of a reach, because if just for example, a small manufacturing company was to come here now and say, I need 500 workers, that would be hard to do. But if they only need 200 because they have a robotics supplement, that's something that we can manage. So that's my thoughts on what the future is and how we're moving today to be able to take advantage of those resources.
Thank you. I just had one more question that I thought of as you were speaking. Because this will take some time, and you mentioned you're open to working with the next governor of the Virgin Islands, will you be involved, and how involved will you be in this, moving forward?
I think it's a tragedy. Oftentimes people look down on the governor speaking to the previous governor or previous governors, but I think that should be a font that anybody should be able to dip into and get the information and knowledge. I mean, I have so much in my head that will never be memorialized to paper. And I do that. If I have a question, I will give John a call, Governor DeYoung, a call and ask him a question about something that happened, or to refresh my memory on a piece of legislation. Moving forward, I think that's why Vision 2040 was so important for me, to get that down on paper on what we want to do as a Virgin Islands. And I figure probably late next year, we will be taking another look at that document and giving it a refresh, so that there's a mandate going into the election about what the people of the Virgin Islands expect from the governor. I'm not going anywhere, hopefully. As far as I could plan, I plan to be around. This is what I like to do. This is what I love to do. And I would keep telling people I wish they would make the legislature part-time so I could run for the Senate, because there's a lot of policy work that needs to be done. There as well. This has been a life passion about improving the Virgin Islands, not only socially but economically as well. And I think for the next chapter, I think we as Virgin Islanders, and that's whether you're born here or you chose to make here your home, we need to be the ones spearheading the economic development, creating EDC companies, partnering with people so that we create ownership and wealth in and among these islands. Thank you so much.
Governor, just some good news on the low-hanging fruit. So you're going to be pleased to know that Pilion has incorporated. Over the past couple of weeks, we've registered the corporation. There's going to be a foreign corporation, and there's going to be a domestic corporation. But more important, we had a meeting. We did some site visit yesterday at Leatherback Brewery and the refinery. And so the reason why Rams Logistics is here, no one moves more cargo throughout the Caribbean than Rams. They have 1,000 employees. 2 of the senior officers are here. So what it means, immediate opportunity from the supply chain. So local Virgin Islanders that are producing products, we don't have to wait for the long-term building of infrastructure. They already have the infrastructure. They have warehousing throughout the region. One of the biggest problems small businesses have and local businesses have, they want to do business in the Caribbean, but they can't afford an entire container. So the conversation we're having with our partners is to be able to consolidate freight for our local businesses who want to distribute their product into the Caribbean. And so we're going to have that opportunity, and Leatherback is going to be the first case study to be able to move Leatherback product from St. Croix to the Caribbean.
Janisha John from the consortium.
Janika Simon, Governor, you've had a great weekend. I am taking it.
No, I've been ill. I'm suffering from a little respiratory thing, but life is good. You say it's probably affecting
Governor,
my brain. I don't know why I calling you Janisha John.
Governor, I think you and I share a similar enthusiasm for the idea of connecting the Caribbean, both cargo and with maritime. I have a number of questions for the representatives from Connect Caribe. Barbados Today in January of this year wrote an article that said that the service would be scheduled to begin in the last quarter of 2024. Is that still on target? And can they speak a little bit more about that?
You know, we did do rounds of funding on this. We raised it 75% financing. We were able to guarantee it for this. This is a very large infrastructure. We estimated the total cost of the Connect Caribbean 5 years is a $400 million investment. So what they identified is the main routes that they want to go on phase 1. So we are actually finalizing that study to see which is the first 2 routes that's going to be more economically feasible. You know, it's good to clarify to people that it's not about jumping and putting the boats to run. You know, a lot of business that has been done in the Caribbean, everything's too rushed. Everything has no master planning. It doesn't have economic accountability. And we actually advised this organization from New York, and we told them, look, guys, I would rather if you do a plan that it can actually happen with solid financing for 5 years than to run it into short term. But I do expect the change in the maritime project to be online, at least with the first boat, within the next few months. And we're going to start on phase 1, is just 1 route, and then we're going to go in phase 2 and phase 3. So every system go online on a predictable time, but also where there is economic demand, because it's a change of mindset. All of a sudden, all the economy in the Caribbean has to accustom to the idea that I can send my product from one island to the other at a very cheap rate. And that's where we are at this moment. And Dr. Thomas will be the person that actually can answer this better than I can, because he's the one that led the negotiation out of Barbados.
Impact to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Keep in mind, the U.S. Virgin Islands was the last leg, 3 legs. As I shared with the governor, in terms of the planning of the route, what's going to happen is now that St. Croix has become the major hub now, we're going to now have a vessel designated to the Virgin Islands for the movement of people and goods, interconnection of our local economy. So the first quarter, or the end of the first quarter, is supposed to be the anticipated launch. What I'm aiming for now that the Virgin Islands is going to play an important role in this process is to be able to leverage our federal resources to now have a vessel come online as early as possible, because, as you know, it's not cheap to fly between St. Thomas and St. Croix. It's expensive. And so therefore, we believe that we can mitigate the economics and make it more affordable to promote inter-island economies and make the economy stronger through having a vessel that will serve the Virgin Islands and then continue on sending passengers and cargo to the rest of the Caribbean.
So what I'm understanding from that is the initial launch of the service is being expected to happen now in Q1 2025, with St. Croix coming online sometime after that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're saying that is correct.
Okay, and the article also made mention that there are 3 vessels that Connect Caribbean currently has. Is the vessel that will service, as you said, or be designated for St. Croix an additional ferry,
You know, the three vessels
making
that
it full?
the 3 vessels they first allocated for this has some issues on the cost running. You know, we had conversations with the European Union, and to facilitate our financing, they wanted vessels that actually run in the biofuels. So vessels are required to actually have a conversion. There's a lot of details that go into selecting the vessel on this, but we will have an announcement of negotiation partnership that we have on the vessel line and the vessel model that is being selected, due to the fact that there is variations of time of going from one island to the other. Some of those vessels, they have to have overnight cabin. Some of them don't. We have cargo needs projections as well, based on the studies of other shipping lines like FedEx, DHL, that they can come into this market on the cross-night, overnight transportation system. So there is all these pieces coming together that it would be speculative for me to give you something that it's not for sure until we actually finalize the specs needed to fulfill the needs of the region.
Okay, so what I understand from that is currently you're still working towards pinning down your fleet.
The right fit for the market demand, so the company actually can sustain itself for the long run.
Okay, as I'm sure everybody in the room would know, there have been several ferry projects for various portions of the Caribbean announced and failed to launch over the years. I know you mentioned that you've been undergoing rounds of funding. In January, it was reported that you had secured an initial investment of 50 million US dollars. And today you said that the 5-year plan looks like requiring an investment of 400 million US dollars. So how far are you now since the 50 million was acquired in January?
You know, we guaranteed 75% financing on this structure with terms and conditions that we cannot release it. But the point that I wanted to explain it to you, it's what kind of ferry project was developed in the past and what kind of ferry project we're developing today. I think the Caribbean people needs to understand that the major focus of this ferry system has always been food stability. I know that everybody loves, you know, festivals and moving people around, but our biggest concern from day one on the system is how can I get a producer from Barbados to send food to another island? Because importing $17 billion for food and the food cost of the region is a great economic distress across the region. So the Caribbean people should be focused. I want cheaper food. I want the transportation to happen for me to be able to eat better. For my economic development between one island to happen, I don't have to run trade deficit in the level that they've been running for years and having all the socioeconomic unrest that we have across the region. So this ferry service, it's not about just moving people. The emphasis always been about moving cargo. We're promoting trade. So everybody has to look at this and say, okay, I'm going to make a plan because I'm going to open a business because I want to create a trade platform that I can trade with the other islands. This never been even dreamed in the Caribbean because the transportation infrastructure based on airplanes doesn't work. We don't have a choice, but it is up to the people of the Caribbean to rise up and demand their government to respond as quick as possible to a full integration into the system. It is the people's responsibility. We put the project, we bring the financing, but without people believing and fighting for, you know how it is. You know, this is a time for people across the region to rise up and say, I want this. I want to pay less for food. I want to have economic opportunity. And we are showing you the way. And it's up to you guys, because we can provide the funding, we can provide the structure, but the bureaucratic system within the islands is a major deterrent. And that has to change. And the responsibility also falls in every citizen of the Caribbean that vote for their government.
Very much appreciate that perspective. Final question for you, and then I have one for Governor Bryan. What other regional governments do you currently have signed MOUs with?
We only negotiated with CARICOM private sector. We took this project to the private sector because for 40 years, government across the region hasn't been able to agree in a policy of both connect across the region. So we had to go, and I'm very thankful for the existing information of CARICOM and the CARICOM private sector, because they explained it to us, this is our mandate. This is our mandate, is to connect the islands. And you guys are the first one that put a cohesive, a master plan that the key players are from the Caribbean. They're not international people that come from another country like we used to see and develop all those companies. No, it's homegrown. It's entrepreneurship at home. That is the biggest thing here. This is the first project that we have home entrepreneurship leading this project, and that is where we are today. But we work directly with CARICOM private sector division.
Thank you. And Governor Bryan, one question from me. Can you or what can you share about the government's responsibilities as it pertains to the MOU that's signed today? What is the government expected to do to help this this service launch?
I want to just emphasize something that he said. In the Caribbean, we live really close to our government, and in most Caribbean countries, people look to the government for everything. But the reality on the mainland is that private sector really drives taxation, policy, commerce, regulation. It's all driven by the private sector, and I think it's brilliant to look to the private sector. And I think we got that, and I talked about that in my speech as well, is the private sector becoming aware and driving policy that benefits us, rather than the government pushing down policy. Like, most of the people we have involved in our government have never made a payroll. They've never opened a business. They don't know about going to the bank and financing a startup. They don't. The people in the private sector are the people who know how to do this. And, we sometimes in our own arrogance think that we do as leaders and as politicians. And we have to be able to respond to the needs of the private sector. Hey, we need customs changes, policies. We need to be able to have a taxation advantages. Energy is a big part of our business. Access is a part of our capital. Our administration has listened to the private sector in doing a lot of these things. So what is our role here? Sometimes our role is to push new policy in the Virgin Islands. Sometimes our role is to get out of the way. Sometimes our role is to support energy initiatives that will allow for these things to exist. We have some announcement on ferry transportation coming up within the next month or two. Something that we're working on. I have to meet with my good friends at the legislature before I say anything else. But these are all initiatives that we have listened to the private sector and saying, okay, this is what you need. This is what we're going to do, and that's how we got these hotels rebuilt that we got through the Hotel Development Act. That's not pushed by the public sector. That was the private sector coming in and saying, this is what we need. All our downtown initiatives, our abandoned and derelict building, those are things that are going to help eventually spur the economy and help people get jobs, secure new businesses and new wealth in our territory. Did I answer your question?
So, Governor, I just wanted to clarify with this particular MOU, and I appreciate the policy education here, but with this particular MOU, does the GVI commit any finances to the project?
There's no there's no direct investment, but we do commit other resources such as the South Shore Economic Trade Zone study that determined whether or not shipbuilding would be viable. Those are the type of resources that we commit to, and we don't do so formally. We just say we collaborate, work together. But it's huge because it's like Raphael says, it's it's trans-Caribbean, it's by Caribbean people, and it's definitely leading edge as we can and already have some of the policies in place that will allow this to grow in our environment.
Thank you so much, Governor. I do agree with you that it is huge, and I wish every success to this project.
you, Janika Simon. All right, I think that's it for us. We're gonna sign this document and make it official. While I have the press, I just want to make another announcement. I know people have been blowing up my phone all week asking me if tomorrow is a half day or a holiday. I am pleased to announce it's a full work day. I know Uber Soca is coming, and the reason why we had a half day in St. Thomas because it would have been a traffic nightmare. The boat is scheduled to leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so everything is going to happen really in the morning. I'm asking all my commissioners and directors to be lenient with people that want leave. You could take your own leave. You got plenty of it. You could take leave, and you got to get permission from your supervisor, but I'm asking them to be lenient with you if you want to participate in the Uber festivities. The other thing is today is my little brother's birthday, so happy birthday, Andre. I hope you have a great day. Other than that, have a fantastic day. Love you.